Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Three Musketeers. I'm Chris Deacon, the resident booze hound. On my left we have Peter Scudamore Smith, the cultivator of all things cultural at Uncorked and Cultivated. And on my right we have Ken Gargett, scribe to the stars. Today we're doing Cabernet Sauvignon, and we're doing a few different fields of Cabernet Sauvignon. We've got our glasses today supplied by Mariki at aboutwine.com. They're called Arche, and they're about $80 or $90 a stem, and they're very flash wine, very flash wine glasses, and very effusive.
And even better, if we break one, he pays for it.
So our first wine of the day is the Ballandine Estate from Stanthorpe in the Granite Belt. Is it still owned by Angelo Puglisi, or did he?
Sorry, I'm tasting it. Yes, the third generation of the Puglisi family is now in control, and the fourth about to start, I believe. So, 40-year-old vines. Cabernet is a cool climate grape, and I guess we're certainly seeing the remnants of the tobacco in the leaf, and then the red currant for the ripeness. Pretty juicy old nose, very hard to see the oak, it's pretty well integrated.
What's the vintage on this one?
2019, so we've got two 2019s followed by a 16.
Yeah, it's got that sort of herbal, slightly vegetal tobacco leaf character.
Yep.
But in a good way.
Oh yeah. Oh,
and there's plenty of fruit to hold it there.
yeah.
Nice and taut.
I think it'll surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, very mid-weight. Yeah.
I'm not sure Cabernet is the best grape from the Granite Belt, but this is doing all right.
And that's because this company doesn't release a Cabernet every year, only releases a Cabernet when it's of the standard. Other years it simply won't release it. I think it's Shiraz they release every year, but the Cabernet has its ups and downs, and really climate does it. Climate's a hard thing on some grape varieties, because this is one of the latest ripening grape varieties there is in the world, but it's the most revered.
And anyone who thinks that the Granite Belt doesn't get cool hasn't been there in winter, because it gets seriously cold.
Well, I think it was -4 the other night at Applethorpe.
Yeah, they only get 50 frosts in a row, that's all.
And not that I would ever disagree with Pete, but Pinot not more renowned than Cabernet?
No, not in I'm talking about area rather than areas grown. I think Cabernet is the most respected in the world internationally. Probably there are, in terms of price, there's probably more highly priced Pinots, but in terms of Cabernet, in terms of area in the world.
Oh yeah. Well, because Pinot struggles in so many areas.
We're going over to Margaret River. This is Mosswood. This is a very muscular Cabernet. Lots of character.
Very much in the style of Mosswood, isn't it? This is the Wilbur.
Wilbur, funny, everywhere in WA and the southwest there's an up, lots of up
I think
towns.
it means water.
Yep. Aboriginal term for where the water is, This is not as muscular on the palate, but the nose is very effusive. It's very ripe, no tobacco. A lot of Margaret Rivers have a bay leaf character. I don't see the bay leaf in this wine at all. I see it riper than that. And lots of chocolate and cocoa oak complexity.
Yeah, cassis, black currants, chocolate mocha, coffee bean.
Just a hint of that Bordeaux pencil box.
The wine has 22 months in oak, so it's not a short life for oak aging. But,
it's not really showing it though. I mean, it's sucked it up.
No, it doesn't show it. I just regard this wine so highly. It's probably one of my 5 top wines out of Margaret River.
Yeah.
And I guess the top of the Medoc is an area called Saint Estèphe, and I think this has similarities with the Saint Estèphe because it is so rich and it's so...
And tannic profile too.
So juicy. Even though it's drying, it's juicy. And there's nothing better to have in your mouth than a juicy Cabernet.
This will age 20, 30 years if you've got a good cellar without... I mean, if you go back to the beginning of Margaret River, not that I'm that old, but
You're pretty
to
old.
think,
1967 was the first planting.
but to think that the Cabernet from Margaret River would ever overtake the reputation of Coonawarra, which was the king of Australian wines, and it sort of was an interesting sort of little cult area full of hippies and cows, and then David Honan and surfers.
And surfers, lots of
David Honan with his Cape Mentel 82-83 when he won the Jimmy Watson in 2 years. And I mean, the first one everyone thought, oh, that's just a fluke and an aberration. And then the second one comes along, and all of a sudden people are thinking, it's not such a fluke. And since then they have just, and Mosswood was one of the very first Keith Mug, oh no, it wasn't Keith Mug, of course, it was Bill Pannell.
Bill Pannell.
And then Keith took over from him, and still in the family. And they've made, I mean, I think there might have been a period where they perhaps stepped down a little bit from some of the top ones, but that's long gone now. In the last decade, they've been spectacular wines.
I think the beauty of the site is that it's a little bit riper. It tends to have a lot more sunlight than other parts of the Margaret River, believe it or not, particularly further south. So there's very little leafiness in this wine, none of that bay leaf character, which makes it absolutely spot on, identifiable as Margaret River.
The thing I really like about this wine is the middle palate, and the thing that a lot of the Pinot-philes say about Cabernet is it misses the middle palate, but this has got middle palate in spades.
Yeah. A lot of people, they've got that donut, great start, hole in the middle, great finish, but that's not the case here. This just goes sailing through.
Yeah, it's a wonderful wine. Very, very flash.
Beautiful drink.
All right, and on to number 3, which is the Leakenfield Coonawarra. This has a couple more years of age on it. It's 2016 vintage, and from the fabled vineyards at Coonawarra. Over to you, Scuds. This is yours.
Made by Paul Gordon, who's been a long time winemaker for Leakenfield. Before then, he made wine for some of the larger Coonawarra-based producers. Unlike the Margaret River, this has got a lot more earth, less aromatic character, and more that it's got some age, obviously being a 16, but it's not fruity. It's more ferric. A little bit of mud, a little bit of cooked meat, that sort of aging Coonawarra.
You can almost taste the red dirt.
Yeah, it's the red dirt thing. They call it Terra Rossa, which is, I guess, partly French and partly Italiano.
I was saying to Ken before, Leakenfield for me is a wine that every time I taste it, I think, how good is that? But I don't have any in my cellar. And it's a little bit like we were talking about Piero. Piero, fantastic wine, and every time you have it, you think, wow, that's so good, but I don't have any in my cellar, and I wonder why that is. But this is a wonderful wine. Yeah. This is very good.
Years ago, I did a Australian food and wine presentation thing for a while over in India, and I think we were in Bombay then, and this guy came in with his guests, and he said, oh, no, I'll go straight to the Margaux. So he ordered a couple of bottles of Margaux off the list, which $1,000 each. He came in a few days later, and he said, we'll start with the Margaux again. And his wife said, no, I much prefer the Leakenfield. And the look on his face was like, oh dear.
So Cabernet is not a full-bodied grape variety in cooler regions, and this wine is very light on its feet. It's very focused, it's drying, but the tannins are luscious, and it's very, very silky and soft, and just a lovely drink.
And that little bit of extra age on it has done it wonders, which will, once the Mosswood gets a few years on it, I think that'll be a spectacular one.
It's already spectacular, and that one also has 10, 20 years plus without, if you've got a good cellar, that will just sail along. Beautiful wine.
So, verdict, the Ballindine was a lovely wine, but it's way out of its class with these two. And these two are probably two of the best examples of Cabernet, in the country, especially around that, what are they, $40 mark? Sort of?
Well, the Moss was 150.
Yeah. It's much,
Oh, I
much,
mean the Leakenfield.
Yeah, 50.
is that, I thought
This
it was
is-
even more, is it?
This is a special selection,
Yeah.
the Sydney Reserve. So I think probably 75 would probably pull it up. Mosswood 150, Ballandine 38.
And Sydney is to Sydney Hamilton,
Sydney
I think,
Hamilton,
who
yeah.
was the guy who started
Who started it, yeah.
And he made the 78 and the 80 were quite legendary wines. If you ever
Great,
got to see
yeah.
those two, they were what? Well, they were I think his first. He was about 70 years old when he kicked it off.
And 74 was the first planting of Riesling I can recall, so I think
Could have been. Well, that was
78 was a great wine.
You talk about Riesling in Coonawarra.
Yeah.
It was in the 70s, and there was still more Riesling than there was Cabernet.
Yeah, and
which
very
is
little Chardonnay.
Very
yeah.
strange world.
Anyway.
For me, I'm just such a fan of that Mosswood. I love, and yeah, look, it is a bit tough to put it in this category. It's a fine wine, but these are spectacular.
That's what we think of these couple. Should you hunt them out, let us know what you think, and even if you don't hunt them out, let us know what you think. That's a wrap for another episode, and I'm glad you could join us. It's good night from me.
Thank you and good night.
So long, and have fun drinking Cabernet Sauvignon.
If you like the wines the boys tried today, click the link below. Glassware supplied by RK. Ken, Peter and Chris appearing courtesy of Queensland Corrective Services. This has been a Three Musketeers production.